Hey there, welcome back to Total Geek Live Baltimore Presents. I'm Baltimore, and today I am bringing you X-Men Grand Designs Second Genesis number 2. That's right, that's this right here. Beautiful copy in my hand, as well as this other variant one. You got the Wolverine here with X-Men, all the fun costumes and designs. So Ed Piskor is back with the second installment of the Second Genesis development of his grand design. Super loving this. I think it's a lot of fun. Yes, he's taking some, choices with the way the timeline runs with the actual continuity of it. But given his, experiment with this and his idea with, creating a full complex narrative in one story, I'm fine with it. I think it's good. It's a lot of fun. And of course, it's one of those little nostalgic things. You have all the newsprint paper, all these really, really wonderful, aged paper, which is really kind of a cool effect that he has. And it makes it feel a little bit more like a retro comic. So I'm really, really digging it. So this one basically takes place. We have ended the Dark Phoenix saga. Jean is gone. She's dead. And we have Kitty Pryde joining the X-Men. And this one starts out with Carol Danvers and kind of giving her backstory, because you may not remember this, but Carol Danvers was actually a pretty important part of the X-Men for about a year or so in their ongoing comic. Chris Claremont took her under his wing and kind of rehabbed her from all the craziness that happened in Avengers 200. I don't want to get into it. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. But we have her coming into this, and we have, of course, Mystique and Rogue. So it gets that little backstory and that kind of going into it. You have that obviously iconic scene where Rogue takes Ms. Marvel's powers, all of them, and absorbs her, leaves her basically without any memories and without any powers. So you have this, and of course Rogue is very much tortured with this. She has Carol's psyche in her head as well. So there's this, really, really awful moments that Rogue is going through. She can't stop this, and it's something that Mystique had made her do. So that's a real big, narrative storytelling point that we have going on in this comic. We have the Brood, their first kind of encounter with the X-Men on Earth. We have Kitty Pryde with that famous scene, although I think it's a little bit switched from what actually happened, but okay. Then we have Cyclops meeting Madeline Pryor. And of course, this is a little bit too different, because in this one, this leads up to X-Men 150, which had Cyclops had left the X-Men in 137, and they come together again in 150, and he has met up with Lee Forrester, a blonde girl he's sort of semi-dating after Jean had died, and they wash up on a deserted island in the Atlantic. But, this is X-Men, so of course this is Magneto's lair. So the X-Men come in, and there's a big, big, big battle. This is where Magneto almost kills Kitty Pryde, and it's part of the reveal that he was Jewish as well. Before then, no one had any kind of real backstory with that. So there was that. That's a big moment in the real comics. It was a little bit touched on in here, but not super much. We have stuff with Doctor Doom and the X-Men when he puts Storm into a metal, sheath in metal, and for someone who's claustrophobic, doesn't sit so well with her. So that was some really great moments when you had that in the real books, when she was frozen in this metal form, and she ended up using her powers and saving the day. So that was really incredible moment. That was nicely depicted in the books as well here. You have of course, the first appearance of the Morlocks and Caliban, and they weigh heavily in these issues as well. You have Caliban coming to take Kitty Pryde because he's in love with her and he wants to marry her. Um, you have Forge creating his power taking away gun, for lack of a better word, with the government and asking, what do they want to do with it? He doesn't really know at the moment. So we have that part going on. We have Wolverine getting married to Mariko in Japan. And this is when, so I guess I'll back up. You have Rogue coming to the X-Men for help because she is, just going crazy. Before that, we have the Brood Saga. And the Brood Saga is pretty freaking phenomenal. The X-Men are in space. Xavier doesn't have any contact with them, all alone. So the X-Men are up there with Carol Danvers, and the Brood experiment on all of them. But in experimenting on Carol, they release her binary powers. So she is like super powerful, solar flares, blasts, strength and flight, all those things. And the look is amazing. I was one of my favorite Carol looks. So you also have all the X-Men being implanted with the Brood. Wolverine basically overcoming it with his healing factor, and then Storm basically through her sheer willpower defeating the Brood inside her. So this is really, really emotional stuff, and in the book does a pretty good job about depicting it, even though there's only a few panels devoted to it. Still really cool. They come back to Earth, and they find that Xavier has started the New Mutants. Oh, the New Mutants, you say? Well, what's wrong with Xavier? Actually, Xavier was also implanted with the Brood, and had formed the New Mutants in order to get more hosts. So the X-Men come back. There's a big fight, and they destroy the Professor X Brood infected body. So he's done and over with. Then we have Rogue coming into the X-Men, and this is that famous picture you have of the cover. Welcome to the X-Men, Rogue. Hope you survived the experience. And it was a very a super divisive moment in the X-Men, taking on someone who was a villain, who not only hurt and severely damaged one of their friends who was with them, Carol Danvers. Xavier says we need to help her, and it caused a big split, a big controversy with the X-Men. Carol leaves Earth for probably 10-ish years, around that time. It was pretty significant. Rogue is semi-welcomed into the X-Men, but she's not fully accepted until they go to Japan for Wolverine's wedding. See, I was getting there. And then we have them getting married. Of course, the marriage doesn't work out. She is attacked. Wolverine is trying to defeat the people that are attacking the Hand, and Rogue takes a bullet for him. It was meant to kill Mariko, and he uses his healing power, gives it to her to save her. So that was the moment they kind of solidified. Okay, we're teammates. We're fine. Okay, past is past. We'll get through it, but we're teams. So that was a really, really great moment. You have Illyana, 7-year-old Illyana, sister of Colossus, who is staying with the X-Men. And her whole moment when she gets trapped in limbo, and they're trying to, bring her back, and then when they finally do, she's actually aged 7 years in limbo between the time that they are pulling her out and she emerges from the limbo disc. And so she is, 14. She's a mutant, demon sorceress, and she's put onto the New Mutants. But it's a really, really challenging because for all since her existence, she was always Peter's little snowflake. And so now there's a lot of conflicting feelings because she spent 7 years being raised by a devil, Belasco. So that really, really, really imprinted on her very heavily, and that caused a lot of problems. We have Angel being kidnapped by Callisto, and that's a famous, Morlock storyline that went on. And this is when Storm defeats Callisto and becomes leader of the Morlocks. And that big hand-to-hand combat, which was really, really amazing in the comics because it's the first time you see the X-Men wound significantly. So that was really, really interesting. So in this one, it did a really good job about that. Let's see, we have Cyclops and Madeline, and that relationship. What is Madeline? Who is Madeline? Is she the reincarnation of Jean Grey? So we have a great moment where you have that panel where she socks him for asking if she's Jean Grey. It's recreated here in Ed Piskor's way, which is great. So that's really, really interesting to see that come to life, and this narrative, come together. They're going to get married. They're going to have a baby at some point, probably. And then we see Colossus injured by the Brotherhood, the Freedom Force, and that was pretty powerful because that was the first time he was injured. Pyro, he superheated him up with his flames, and then Avalanche ignited a cryogenics, so it super hot and then super cold, and it froze him in his, it kept him in his metallic form, and he couldn't move, he couldn't change for fear of whatever's going to happen. Thankfully, the Rogue and the healer from the Morlocks was able to save him. A little bit different here, but that kind of narrative makes it work in this adaptation, and that was pretty powerful. Then, of course, we have Forge coming back into it with his power neutralizing gun, and in the comics, he's trying to shoot Rogue because she is the one that's the powers need to be neutralized. Storm gets in the way and takes the blast, and her powers are removed. And this was a really significant time because she had just shaved her head. She was Mohawk Storm. Yeah, it was Mohawk Storm. And all of that, which was awesome. And now she was depowered. She had no powers. And what does that mean to be a former mutant leading the X-Men? Is that even possible? And those were great times, too, in the comics, because she was leading the X-Men. Cyclops ended up coming back. He's like, should I be the X-Men leader, or should I not? And they end up having a battle. Powered up Cyclops versus unpowered Storm, and she wins, which was a really cool moment. But the moments between Storm and Forge, in the comics, they have a life-death issue, which was beautifully illustrated. And they spent a year in this world, and she comes to forgive him. She comes to peace without her powers, and is able to kind of deal with it. And they end up sort of falling in love and being, an item for a while. But I really do love these Grand Design retellings. I think it's a great way to kind of capture this entire, almost 300 issues of X-Men and condensing it to make sense into one single story. It's an incredibly tough job, but I think Ed's doing an amazing job at it. X-Men Second Genesis Part 2, you really have to check it out because it really is beautiful. There's so much emotion you can tell in these pages, and he's really, really pouring his heart out creating this and making something all the fans can really enjoy. So I definitely would pick it up. But X-Men Grand Design, Second Genesis Part 2, what was your favorite moment in this book? I have a lot that I've shared with you, but you tell me what your favorite is. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will be back with more X-Men goodness as soon as possible. As always, it's all geek to us.